You're listening to the Overcast, your joke-making, fun-having pop culture podcast, brought to you by Oversoul Gaming.
Hello there, everyone, and welcome to the Overcast. I'm Justin,
I'm Nick.
And I'm Brooksy.
and together we're bringing you sunshine on a cloudy day. And today we are joined by a very special guest, none other than Wolfbrother Methos. Hey, buddy, thanks for joining us.
What is up, beautiful people? I am Methos, and it is a pleasure to be here tonight.
He is, for those of you who don't know, he's been one of the most consistent and active viewers on my YouTube channel, has watched pretty much almost everything that I've uploaded for years and years. So we've been friends for a very long time, and through YouTube and stuff, now have shared interests in crazy anime game series like Danganronpa and Kingdom Hearts, and long-running horror franchises like Layers of Fear and Resident Evil. So, yes. So it's an honor to have you on the show, my man. I know we've been planning on doing something for a long time, and this also means that you'll finally probably have a clip in upcoming reactions and highlights, too.
That'll be awesome.
Depending on what happens tonight.
Hell yeah.
So, as is tradition on this show, for the life update section, we usually like to let our guest go first. So, Methos, how have you been? What have you been up to? Have you done anything interesting lately? Tell us about some life highlights that's been going on.
My life highlights are kind of all over the place. Last year, I went to the hospital. I realized I needed to make some life changes. So, for about 135 days now, I've been doing keto. Recently got a new gym subscription, so I've been working out again. I'm down a little over 20 pounds, and yeah, just making some big differences out here. Um, I run a YouTube channel, formerly known as Frost and Fists, but we're changing some things around there. But it was primarily a Warhammer YouTube channel, and we're doing some major changes because I'm falling less in love with Warhammer and getting into some other hobbies, kind of like the ones I'll be talking about here in a minute. So it's just going to be a kind of an all-encompassing hobby channel going forward.
Will it still be tabletop gaming stuff though, in general?
Yeah, tabletop and tabletop adjacent. So like normally not a lot of tabletop gamers enjoy card games. In fact, I think because they're often at like local shops and stuff like that competing for table space, for some reason a lot of card gamers and other tabletop gamers don't get along very well.
Okay.
But yeah, I fall
That's
into the
actually
rare
kind of
crossover
funny.
category.
That's funny because I actually fully understand what you're talking about. I used to be a very avid Magic the Gathering player, and there was a weird stigma against tabletop gamers at my card shop.
That's
I've been on both
fantastic.
sides of the fence. I totally get that.
Ryan plays a lot of Magic the Gathering online, like the video game. You guys should link up with him
I
about
know I
that
watched,
sometime.
yeah, I watched them Twitch stream some of it a few days ago.
Oh, nice. Okay. So what
Video
else is
game
new?
Video game wise, I've been playing a lot of Overwatch 2 lately. It's something I do with the wife as kind of a hangout time with her. Um,
Okay.
Nice.
and I still really enjoy Overwatch 2, and obviously aesthetically, it's just a beautiful game, and I love the characters and character concepts. But I got to say, a weird direction it's been going over the last few years is it's becoming more and more lethal as the game goes on, which is really kind of leading to some feels bad, either roll or get rolled gameplay. So it's either like you're
Mm.
either dominating and it's awesome, or you're like, man, why did I even plug in my controller today?
Yeah, some unbalanced matchmaking. Well, I hear if you're a fan of Overwatch that free-to-play Marvel Rivals is really good in that same vein. Um, Seems like the kind of thing you might like if you like Overwatch.
Oh yeah, I intend to try it out at some point. It looks really good, and I hear a lot of good things about it.
Okay.
My main life update, though, is that I have recently got back into Yu-Gi-Oh! After about a 10-year hiatus.
Oh, nice.
And
Nice.
Oh wow.
I'm just absolutely loving it. So like I got back into it. My brother, Darklight Dreamer, recently got back into it, and we're slowly getting the rest of our friends back into it. And
Wait,
it
the
has just
card
been
game or the anime?
the well, so like the card game, but because the card game, Razzie and I've been going back and watching the anime as well.
Fair.
So
Okay.
it's kind of a
Yu-Gi
domino effect.
Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Master is a fun game.
I haven't gotten on Duel Masters yet, but it's funny. The thing that got me back into the card game was Duel Links. It's their free PVE game, and so for someone who
Mm-hmm.
hasn't played in
Nice.
about 10 years, a PVE game was like way more appealing to me at the time. And then that kind of got its claws into me, and now I'm like fully back into full addiction now.
Nice.
Claws, blue eyes, white dragon. I see what you did there.
That's awesome. Hell yeah.
Uh,
Um.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Go. Keep going.
I was just going to say, so years ago, like every Friday night, we would do a card night over at my place, and we'd have like 7, 8, 9, 10 of us over, and we'd just be playing Duel Monsters for hours and hours. It was during the Synchro era, and a lot of us really got good with those decks. And then as time kept kind of going on, we kind of stayed in that kind of Edison Synchro era as a couple years passed. And we're like, oh, well, we're not spending money to modernize. We're sticking with this one era. But then, like later on, that later gave way to we went to back to playing Magic the Gathering, and then that led us to the game shops. And then, like we were playing a big like 20-person chaos match at one point, and me and one of my best friends were like the first ones to get eliminated. And we started looking around at some of the tabletop game demos that they had going on. And then that's when I developed a full blown Warhammer addiction that lasted like 8 years. And now I'm finally back to Yu Gi Oh!
Okay. Nice. Yeah, I remember. I gotta say, just from some of the streams and videos that I've watched on your channel, the paint job that you do on those Warhammer minifigures is nothing to shake a stick at. I tell you what, like the precision and steady handedness that you have to be able to do that. I could never. Like, it's impressive. I think you do really good work.
Thank you so much,
Um,
my brother.
I'm actually a little sad to see you stepping away from that particular thing, but I'm excited to see what you do next. Like very excited, honestly.
I still love painting and stuff. I think that's always going to be part of my, my background hobby. It's just no longer going to be the forefront of my personality.
Right. Um, if I could ask you real quick, if you don't mind sharing, how did your Valentine's Day go?
My Valentine's Day was awesome. We went out and actually saw my what's it the oh my god, the Hard Ice Killer movie on Valentine's Day. That was a fun movie.
Okay.
It was cheesy as we expected it to be, but it was like a fun kind of cheesy
Nice.
and very enjoyable.
There
And
is
then
a new horror movie that just came out called The Monkey, based on a short Stephen King story that I really want to see because I hear
Uh,
it's really good.
yeah, Sam and I are actually going and seeing that tomorrow morning. Very excited about it.
nice.
You'll have to tell me what you think.
I absolutely will.
Sorry,
Uh,
Mythos. Keep
oh,
going.
it's all good. We did dinner together. We spent some time. My wife even got a new dress for the occasion. She looked gorgeous. And then, a nerd couple thing. We ended up going to like a game, like a video game shop and a card shop. And so I got her the collector's edition of the newest WoW expansion because she's been wanting to get back into WoW. And then she bought me
Nice.
a statue of Slifer the Sky Dragon. So no
Oh, so
flowers and
cool.
candies here, guys.
Ooh.
So yeah, it was an awesome Valentine's.
Very nice. Okay. All right. Well, is that all you had for us?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Nick, you're next for the
So,
life updates. You've done some
first,
interesting things lately, and I need to hear about it.
yes. So, my Valentine's Day, or should I say, our Valentine's Day, me and Sarah, we went to a hockey game. It was the Night in the Wild for the Iowa Wild, and they handed out the little bobbleheads of the mascot Crash, dressed up in a Cupid outfit with a bow and arrow and everything. It was fucking awesome. We ended up with 3 of them. But the real Valentine's Day celebration happened on Saturday, the 15th. At 1:30 in the afternoon, we went to the Civic Center in downtown Des Moines, and we went to go see Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince in concert. I believe I sent a picture to our little group chat of the
Yep.
stage with the big screen up above, hanging above the orchestra. It was really fucking cool. So basically, they play the movie up on the screen and they cut out the music track, and the orchestra played the music track with the film. It was so fucking cool. And they advertised for next year for the Deathly Hallows Part 1 in concert, and we already have tickets.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you're watching the movie, but with the soundtrack being played live in front of you with an actual orchestra.
Yes, it was so fucking cool. So
That's cool as hell.
they before it started, the conductor, he had basically had said, "Hey, we want to hear you boo. We want to hear you cheer. We want to hear you we want to hear you interact. We love hearing that." And then they just took off from there. It was so fucking cool.
That really
like
sounds
it.
amazing, my brother.
Yeah.
A couple
Oh,
years ago,
dude.
a couple years ago, there was an Advent Children screening like that with the the orchestra and all of that while screening Final Fantasy's Advent Children. And
Nice.
I wanted so badly to see it. I had the money ready and everything, but it sold out in minutes.
I'm actually jealous of Nick because the Final Fantasy Orchestra is doing a Final Symphony concert in Des Moines at the Civic Center, same place, this April for music from Final Fantasy 6, 7, and 10, the 3 best ones in the series. And I have a snowball's chance in hell of being able to be there for that. Like, oh, it's just so unfortunate that he's the one that's close to it, and it's the kind of thing that I would want to go to.
It's just a 4.5-hour drive.
Just
Minor details.
Anyways, keep going, Nick.
I saw this in an anime. You just put yourself in a box with some holes in it and mail yourself to Nick.
Yeah.
I mean, there you go. Hey, hell, you might end up through the warehouse that I work in. Speaking of, I started my job. It's essentially the same kind of work I was doing at UPS, just with a bigger name attached to it. And until I can make regular, I am basically doing the grunt work that no one else wants to do.
Which means what exactly?
Basically, when someone calls in, I take their spot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I do all the stuff that someone else would normally be doing. But there's a lot of benefit to that because I'd get to learn all of the different areas in the building. And when I do eventually make regular, I get to bid on what shift I want. So until I make regular, my days off are going to fluctuate.
Fair enough.
I'll get to bid on what schedule I want to be on for basically what days off and what department I want to be in.
Okay.
And that could happen very quickly because from my understanding there's 4 regulars retiring in April, and they've been converting uh my position for people left and right.
Okay. The way you put it, kind of sounds like you're a substitute.
Exactly. Exactly.
Fair enough.
That.
It's probably something they do in what they call the probationary period, your first so many days on any job.
First
Bef-
90 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's an adjustment. I got my tax return back, and
I was gonna ask if anybody got their tax refund. I got mine too.
yeah, I got mine, and I just bought I bought the Chevy Malibu from Sarah. So I now am the proud owner of a 2017 Chevy Malibu LT.
Congrats.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Congrats.
it's a nice car.
I haven't bought anything fun with mine yet. I did spend almost $400 on groceries though.
On my way home from work today though. No, I'm not my on my way home. On my after immediately after picking up my daughter from Sarah's mom's, we we made a little trip down to the Jordan Creek Mall, and I paid a visit to the Apple Store, and I now have the iPhone 16 Plus with Apple Intelligence because my phone, my old phone, my 12 Pro, was actively taking a shit on my way to the mall. It was plugged in, running GPS, and actively dying.
Yeah.
The battery by the time I got to the Jordan Creek Mall was at like 14%. So, yeah, I was definitely in need of a new phone.
That'll happen
Yeah,
eventually. Batteries eventually stop holding a
it
charge
was
after
the
so much time.
battery health was at 77%. And from what the guy at the Apple store was telling me, once it hits 80%, that's when it'll start depleting faster. And I
Yeah.
had that phone since 2020. So it feels nice to have one of the newer iPhones. And then we had steak and shake for dinner. I had the double garlic burger, double garlic steak burger. It was so good.
Man, I haven't had steak and shake in a while. Good
It was so
stuff.
good.
Good good stuff all around.
Yeah.
I haven't bought anything fun with my tax return yet, like I said, but I think I am going to pre-order Assassin's Creed Shadows with it.
There you go.
All right. Brooksy, what's up with you?
Yeah. I want to say really biggest life update I've had in the past few weeks is officially have a brand new roommate that moved in. I want to say 4 or 5 days ago. It was on Monday. Um, but it's someone that I've known for I want to say like 3 or 4 years at this point. Funnily enough, she is someone that I hired and did orientation for when I used to be a senior manager for Mendocino Farms, which is like a salad and sandwich place that's pretty popular in California. There's a few locations in Texas, I believe, as well. But I hired her, trained her, helped her move up into the ranks of a shift closer, wrote a letter of recommendation for her to become a manager. She ended up taking my place when I left restaurants entirely and moved into the world of staffing and recruiting. We've just maintained really great friendship. So very, very excited to have her move in. It's kind of cool to, we have a 5 bedroom house and we have 5 people that live here now. So it's like it's our own little commune that we have on the outskirts of San Diego now. So that's been really cool. It's been great to have her move in.
Man, you've got the
What
setup
is
for your
it?
own
Oh,
sitcom over there.
really, honestly do. And like it's the only way that we can make rent affordable here in Southern California. So
Yeah.
that's the she had a 1 bedroom apartment that was near the location that she and I used to work at together. She was paying $2,500 a month for a 1 bedroom.
Jesus Christ.
Now, yeah,
Oh.
yeah, and now we pay each of us pay a little less than like 1,100 a month for our house, which like it still feels wild that I'm paying 1,100 to split a house 5 ways. But I mean, it's a really big house. It's really nice. It's got a huge backyard. My wife gardens and loves everything that we have here. So I mean, and both her and I work remotely, so we get the most use out of the house too. So um, no, that's been the really big thing. Speaking of said roommate, for Christmas, we actually Sam and I gifted her tickets to go see the kind of like what you were talking about earlier with the symphony for Final Fantasy. We gifted her tickets to see the symphony for Stardew Valley because she is someone that has put
Nice.
thousands of literal hours into Stardew Valley.
Nice.
So we're gonna take her to go do that. I think it's in August of this year, but in return, she had gifted Sam and I tickets to go see Wicked the musical, which I had never seen. Like I saw Wicked the movie and absolutely fell in love with it. Sharon is someone that came with us to go see it, so she thought it would be a great experience for us to all go see it together. Sam and I for the very first time, her for the millionth time. It was awesome. It was so awesome. I don't know, Nick, if you've seen the musical or
I have
not, so I
not.
don't want to give any. Okay, I will not give a single spoiler, but man, is part two going to be
Wait, wait,
wild.
wait,
Dude,
wait,
so
Part
wait, wait.
I
Are
two.
you
have
talking about the movie or the Broadway musical, the play, the state?
So we saw the movie a few months
Okay,
ago,
okay,
and because of how much we loved it, Sharon got us tickets to go see the musical, so the entirety, the full thing.
yeah.
okay. I just needed
Um,
context
so
for
I,
your side with Nick there.
oh, gotcha. Yes, that's why I don't want to
Okay,
say
got it.
any kind of
So I
spoilers or anything
know
like
a
that.
little bit, because there was someone did upload the musical in its entirety onto YouTube, and I watched it with
Mhm.
Sarah. So in a sense, I've seen the musical, just not live. I am
Gotcha.
gonna keep my eyes peeled to see if and when it comes to the Civic Center in Des Moines, though, because
It
bet your
was
sweet ass I'll be getting
really good,
tickets.
dude. It was so good. It
In
was
other words,
so
he's seen
good.
the musical. That's what he
Yeah,
has seen it.
Yeah.
So there's no spoilers for him.
Yeah, and what's funny is like the first half, because it's literally the way that the musical's broken
hmm
up, is like
Act
when the,
one, Act
when the
two.
intermission happens. Yeah, Act One is the entire first movie. So it was funny. We were watching it, and I'm like, okay, this is all really good and all, but Loki, I watched this movie like a week ago, so this is very fresh in my mind. Like, it feels like it's dragging a little bit. I think it's just because I've seen it so many times since it's come out in
But
theaters.
Act two is what did it for you.
Oh man, I was so invested. It was so good. There were so many twists and turns that I was not expecting at all, and how it intertwines with like the Wizard of Oz and really just the world of Oz as a whole was it was so good.
It,
If it comes near you, man, go see it
I'm
because it's
going
so
to.
worth it.
So
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the same actress that is on the musical on YouTube, but the actress that plays Glinda has so much fucking fun with that role. And it's so funny.
Oh yeah,
So funny.
yeah. You could tell she was having the time of her life. Both her and Elphaba, both of them. You could just
Mm-hmm.
tell like they were just in love with their character, in love with their role, and just having the best time with it. And it just made it all the more enjoyable. I almost spent my entire weight in merch when I was there, but fortunately, Sharon tapped me on the shoulder. Was like, we can get all of this stuff, the exact same stuff, much cheaper online. I'm like, okay, cool. Okay, cool. I'll buy something online later because it was just, it was awesome.
That's awesome.
Um,
I'm
So,
glad you were able to
um,
see it.
so how did
Yeah,
your
no.
Valentine's Day go?
So I feel like I'm going to be kind of a lame duck compared to Nick at the very least. Well, compared to both you and Methos, we really didn't do a whole lot. It was really we spent time together working on Sam's garden. That's kind of her happy place. So spent time with her out there. Just I DoorDashed us one of her favorite places to eat. And we hung out and we binge watched all of the first set of episodes of Love is Blind because we are both massive fans of trash TV. It's garbage. It is absolute literal human garbage, and I devour every tiny little crumb. Uh, this season's
I
so
love it.
bad, and I love it. But yeah, we had Daniel has kids, and they come over every other weekend. So it was the weekend that they were over with us. It was also his eldest kid's birthday weekend, so it was really a lot of like prioritizing his eldest kid more so than anything else. So it was just, it was a very low key, nothing special, nothing fancy, Valentine's Day, but we still had a great time and everything.
Okay,
There you go.
well, good stuff.
Yeah.
All right, well, unlike the rest of you, I didn't have a Valentine's Day, but I was glad to hear about yours. But what I do have for you is a crazy work story. But before that, um, yeah, this is oof. But before that, I had what I've been up to lately. I started watching because some of my favorite shows started coming back, so I started watching. I want to season 3 of Invincible and season 4 of Harley Quinn, and both of these shows, Nick, Brooksy, you guys like The Boys. If you like The Boys,
hmm
you will like these shows too, especially Invincible. Invincible, for all intents and purposes, is an animated version of The Boys. Um,
I've seen a
hmm
few episodes of Invincible.
Yeah, I've seen the first 2 seasons. I know there was some wonkiness with season 3 and like how long it was taking to come out. So I was like, I'll just wait for it to like fully come out before I delve
oh,
into it.
season 3 is insane so far. You have no idea. And season 4 of Harley Quinn is crazy too. But that show, that is. I think that show is one of the best things DC has ever done, like for their animated stuff. It really is so good in the way it ties so much. It is meant for adults, though. That is not a kid show by any means,
No, definitely
but
not.
it is
Nope.
hilarious, and it's exactly what it should be. And it is following a Harley and Ivy comic line for the most part, but there's a lot of chaos, a lot of chaos. Um, but I love that show so far. Started I started playing Eternal Strands. I haven't gotten very far in it. Started playing Avowed. I like it so far. It's good, but it's not like it doesn't stand out among the crowd or anything. It's literally
Mm.
Skyrim. It's literally Skyrim. Like it plays almost exactly like it. And I've heard some people call it clunky. I think these people are playing it in third person, and quite frankly, that's on them. Because I'm playing it in first person, and it does not feel clunky to me. It feels like Skyrim. If by clunky you mean that you don't lock on to targets and you have to actually be looking in the direction of something that's about to hit you in order to block, that's how Elder Scrolls games played. So it's not, if you're used to games like Dragon Age where you can lock onto your enemies, then you're going to be missing that here. But it's not clunky. That's the wrong word. I would say involved is maybe aged a little because it does feel it does feel like a game that should have maybe come out 4 years ago, but it's not bad. It's actually really good so far. I'm enjoying it. So I would say, since it's free on Game Pass, people should maybe just at least give it a try before, don't turn your nose up at it. Definitely give it a go if you like Bethesda style RPGs, because Obsidian is really good at making them, and this feels like one. So,
Hell yeah.
Awesome.
and I mean, hell, Obsidian made the best Fallout game, so they made New Vegas, and I love the Outer Worlds. I also didn't realize they also made Grounded and Pentiment, so, and those games have some accolades behind them. So, but yeah. And I finally finished the Clone Wars on my Star Wars chronology rewatch. The Clone Wars and Revenge of the Sith. I watched like the last 4 episodes of Clone Wars and that movie simultaneously, because they run parallel to each other. So, and I think the next thing in line, because now I'm in the post prequel but also pre original trilogy era, during the Hunt the Remaining Jedi era, I call it. I think the Bad Batch is next in line. So I'm guessing not all the clones turned evil, because the Bad Batch is definitely they were misfit clones that didn't fit in with the others, but made their own crew. So I'm looking forward to that on my journey, because that's another thing I'd never seen yet. So but the era that I'm in now is where the Bad Batch takes place, Solo, Rogue One, Andor, the Jedi Survivor and Fallen Order games, and the VR game Vader Immortal. So there's a lot of stuff between the 3rd and 4th movies. So I'm looking forward.
I need to finish Clone Wars.
Oh, the Clone Wars show is so good. I'm surprised they considered that a kid's cartoon, because it gets so dark. But anyways, the funny work story. As most people know, I work in a fast food restaurant known for their roast beef, primarily, but more lately known for their fish and ham. And so one of our managers, we have this one customer that likes to be really complicated. They like to do this thing where they overcomplicate their order, hoping that something will go wrong, and even if nothing does, they'll come back and say something was wrong so they can get free food. They've been pulling this trick for a long time, and
Oh Jesus.
it finally got on one of the manager's nerves, and she came out and started arguing with her about it. And she had this lady's change in her hand, and this lady, the customer, takes the lid off of her drink, and I've seen enough videos on the internet to know that this means she's about ready to splash the manager with it, and I know that that's what the manager thought too. So she did what they call in Final Fantasy games a preemptive strike, and before the customer even had a chance to throw that drink on her, she instinctively pelted her in the face with the change in her hand. And and yes, big ooh.
Y'all have the change. That's awesome.
Well, the thing is, though, this customer ended up calling the cops because of this, and they insisted on watching the security footage, and the security footage shows our manager throwing change at a customer's face with no real, inciting incident to make it happen. Because, yeah, she did take the lid off of her drink, but she never actually got to the point. Because the manager saw that and reacted so quickly, she never got to the point where it looked like she was even gonna throw it on her, in a way that would have mattered for the camera, that would have counted for the camera. So, and the customer wants to press charges on the manager, but interestingly enough, the cops are treating it as a civil issue and saying that it's the district attorney's problem. So they said they just need They said they just need the footage from the security camera, which our head manager keeps like conveniently finding ways to not give them, but it's going to be a problem if they keep trying to avoid it. I will say
Yeah.
that manager thought she was going to jail that day and ended up locking herself in the bathroom for a while because she
Jesus
was
Christ.
she was hiding, you
What
know. Uh
What an event.
yeah, so
Man.
and this all happened while I was on break, by the way. I came back and heard about it secondhand, and like all the crazy shit either happens when I'm on break or not there. So I remember I go on break, I come back, and there's like cops there and a customer outside arguing with the cops. I'm like, oh God, what happened? Then I come in, and like as soon as I walk in, everyone's just giving me this look, and I'm like, oh shit, something happened. So yeah. Um so that's the crazy work story, and outside of that, I haven't had anything else interesting going on. But I will say that the SNL 50 specials were really good. Both the 3-hour special that they did full of skits, bringing back a bunch of old cast members and celebrities, and the musical special that they did was really cool. The Lonely Island did like a 6-minute medley on stage at that point. They also had a new song during the 50-year special about cast members having anxiety. It was pretty funny. They brought back so many old cast members: Kristen Wiig, Jason Sudeikis, Fred Armisen, Bobby Moynihan was there, Cecily Strong.
Drunk uncle.
Yeah, and classics like Adam Sandler, David Spade was there, Drew Barrymore, Jimmy Fallon, Robert De Niro, Jack Nicholson was in the audience, Ben Stiller was in the audience. Also during the musical special, so many celebrities were in the audience there, and Pedro Pascal and Paul Rudd were both like in the front rows of the audience for the big concert that they had, and they danced through pretty much every song. Both of those actors, I love them. They both have major golden retriever energy, and we need to protect them at all costs. So
Yes.
Pedro Pascal, who plays a fantastic Joel from The Last of Us, by the way, in the live action series, and also is Mando in The Mandalorian. You never rarely ever see his face in that show. He does a lot of sad dad stuff. That's kind of his thing. But he's also going to be Reed Richards in the upcoming Fantastic Four movie this year. So,
Yes. I have some thoughts on SNL 50.
Yeah, quickly.
So they missed a huge. I know Bill Hader opted not to be there, but they
Yes.
missed a huge opportunity to have Stefan plan the after party for the 50th anniversary.
Yeah, very true. However, they did manage to squeeze him in a bit later that they did about problematic sketches throughout the years, like really like racist and body shaming and ableist sketches that they used to do back in the day when before it was more taboo to do so. And remember, 50 years is a long time.
Yeah.
The show's been on longer than I've been alive. So, yeah. So yeah, they got away with a lot more back in the day, things that they can't really do now, and they I respected the fact that they owned that and did a bit about it. It's not, they're not trying to sweep it under the rug like Disney does. They're doing like a yeah, we did this, we own it, our bad, we won't do it again. But let's laugh about it.
Right.
Like that's I respect that. They got. The writers have Tina Fey wrote most of that special, by the way. She was one of the
Nice.
writers on it. Yeah, so
I feel like that's kind of because like their segment on was it the Daily News is like all about making those kind of
the
like
Weekend Update.
tongue
Yeah,
in
Weekend
cheek
Update.
problematic.
Yeah.
Weekend Update.
yeah,
that's what it
Weekend
is.
Update. Yeah, it's very tongue in cheek and self aware because Michael and Che they have an ongoing thing where every year around Christmas time, since they're going on a mid season hiatus anyway, they force each other to tell very racist jokes because one of them's white and the other one's black, so it's funny to them to make each other say this shit online, but neither one of them is actually racist or anything, so it's kind of like a it's the the funny part isn't the joke itself; it's the fact that they're doing it
Yeah.
in the first place. Yeah.
It, the,
Uh,
their chemistry is fucking awesome.
yeah. It was really good when they had Scarlett Johansson on and she was actually reacting to these jokes behind the scenes during their Christmas episode with Martin Short. Yeah. That was beautiful. But yeah, I love me some SNL, and I think the only thing I would say I think they shouldn't have done during the 50-year special was they did a part 3 to their ongoing Domingo sketch, but it doesn't make sense if you haven't seen the first 2 parts. So for people who were just tuning in for this, it was really just an excuse to give Pedro Pascal another cameo, but like it's honestly it's the third part of a long running skit, and the joke hits better if you know the setup from the first 2 times they did it. The first time they did it was the Ariana Grande episode earlier this year. I can't remember when the second one was, but and since they had Pedro, I do wish that they would have done his overprotective Latina mom skit with Marcelo Hernandez, but because that one's hilarious. But yeah, also I'm glad that they did a John Mulaney musical skit with Pete Davidson again. That's like the 7th one of those they've done, and they're always hilarious. So, but yeah, great special overall. That's my thoughts on it. All right, gentlemen. With that piece of media talk out of the way, I say that makes a good transition over to the media corner
Let's
part of the show.
mosey on over.
Have you ever wanted to, like, lay a curse on someone?
All right, everybody, here we are at the media corner, the part of the show reserved for news, reviews, recommendations, and sometimes previews. And we're going to start with Brooksy on this one.
Yeah, I've been really excited to talk about this. I have been playing Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Before I fully delve into it, I do want to state that this is a review that is in progress. I am currently about 25 hours into the game, but
A drop in the ocean.
yeah, a drop in the ocean. Because I mean, this is a game that in theory you could complete in about 60 hours, give or take. But to really delve in and do all of the side quests, all of the tasks, really explore and hone in on different skills, it is a game that can be, around 150 hours. So I feel like I've just barely scraped the surface of what this game really is. But I feel like I've played enough to at least have a feeling of what my review will look like in the end. But as it currently stands right now, I am giving this game a 9 out of 10. Um, it is it's awesome. It's really, really awesome. I am traditionally a very big fan of giant open world games. I am a huge fan of RPGs. I am a huge fan of lore and detail, and this game really delivers so well on it. The premise of the game is that you play as Henry of Skalitz, and it is a true successor to Kingdom Come Deliverance 1 from what I have read and what I have seen online. Candidly, I have not played Kingdom Come Deliverance 1. Frankly, I had not even heard of this game until about a month before its release. Started looking more into it, found it really interesting. Reviews started coming in, just harking this game as one of the greats, and I just curiosity killed the cat, and I, I wanted to try it out. But you play as a guy by the name of Henry of Skalitz. It delves straight into where the first game dropped off. You do not need to play the first one, in my opinion. I think that they do a really great job of hand-holding those that have never played the first game to kind of understand the backstory of what's happened leading up to this point. But it's you as well as Sir Capon, who is a noble that you are a bodyguard for, and you are in charge of helping deliver a letter to a town, to a specific leader, um, in hopes to be able to stop a potential war happening in the land that the game is set in. Um, Absolute chaos ensues, and you really play for the game for about 3 hours of just the prologue itself before the game fully opens up. Once the game fully opens up, I felt like it was a matter of minutes before all of a sudden I had 10 side quests of things like finding where my dog had went, to helping out a little old lady find her little old lady find her, adoptive daughter, to working with working with a blacksmith to learn blacksmithing school skills to be able to gain their trust to hopefully have you be invited to a huge wedding, which is a main quest in the game. This wedding mission that they have inside of it is considered like the first real main mission once you've completed the prologue of the game. And even with me 20 to 25 hours into the game, I still have not even done the wedding. Because there's really two different routes you could go. You could either support a blacksmith, go through his quest line to be able to gain his trust and be able to go to the wedding, or you can work with a miller that's in a different part of the map and go through his quest line to be able to gain his trust to go into the wedding. I've actually completed both of those quest lines. I haven't decided whether I want to go with the blacksmith or with the miller. I find the miller's story a bit more interesting, so I think I'm going to be going that route. But when I say that this game is incredibly detailed, like yeah, a good example I can give is some of the mechanics that are in this game that you learn to be able to craft certain things, like blacksmithing itself, where you actually take a rod of steel and you put it into the fire and you use your controller to move it through the coals back and forth to be able to get an even heat level on it, and then you bring it over to the anvil and you literally hammer it, and if you do it at a specific tempo, he'll start whistling along to it, and that's how you know you've got the perfect tempo along to it. The better tempo and the better blacksmithing you do, the stronger the weapon or item that you're making is, the higher you can sell it for, or the better it is for when you're using it yourself. All of your armor and weapons get wear and tear. They can break if you don't take care of them routinely. And you can either go to a blacksmith and have them take care of it, but it won't be as good if you personally yourself go over to a sharpening wheel and spend a few minutes sharpening your sword yourself. You have to hold it at a specific kind of angle, otherwise smoke will start coming out, meaning that you're damaging the blade itself. Or even something like alchemy, which I've come to realize is super important in this game, because there's some weird tricks in this game in the sense of keeping your character alive. Like it's like a Tamagotchi. You need to make sure he's fed, but feeding doesn't actually heal your character. You can only heal through either sleeping or through taking a specific type of decoction. And you can find the recipe for that decoction. You have to go out into the field and pick marigold and pick another herb, and you go to an alchemy table and you literally pick a specific liquid, put it in a cauldron, put some of the herbs in the cauldron, let it boil for a specific amount of time that you use a time dial for to be able to know how much you should have it on the fire. Lift it up, put the other herbs inside of a mortar pestle, grind that, put it inside of the pot, let it be on the flame for a little bit longer, and then you're able to pour it. And depending on how well you can follow instructions that are in a book, that you literally have to like kind of go back and forth, unless if you've memorized the recipe. Um, it will show how strong that potion is. It'll also affect the yield that you get out of it. So if you do it perfectly, you'll get like 3 or 4 bottles of a like level 3 potion. If you do it poorly, you may get just like one of like a level 1. I love the detail that's in it, and above everything else, the story in this game is so heartfelt, and it's so funny. Like, it's just oddly hilarious, and there's dialogue for everything. There's even been reports that they're trying to validate it, but currently right now the game with the longest word track that's been ever made is Baldur's Gate 3, with about 20,000 words spoken in the game. And
Hmm.
Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, they're working on verifying it, but they have allegedly 21.2 thousand words of dialogue in this game to show how massive it is, how many people you can talk to, how many side quests there are. Like, it really feels endless. And I say all these amazing praises, and which would make me think like this could very well be a 10 out of 10 game, but it does come with some faults. One of the biggest faults for me is that it is a buggy game. It is a small developer team, so as I play it, there are certain things that feel very 2013 Skyrim-y about it, where I've literally been like walking down a road and a horse runs by me, and then somebody glitched that I guess was originally on the horse, and it looks like they're riding a bearskin rug, just gliding across the ground, and just says hello, and I'm like, what the hell was that? Okay. Uh,
Yep.
Either that, the one that is the most frustrating to me is that it looks like there's some issue with like the gamma lighting in the game, where if it's raining while it's outside, depending on like how I move my character, it'll flash like really high brightness, like really quickly, like it looks like a strobe effect on my screen, and it kind of pulls me out
Mm.
of the game, and I'm like, I really don't like that. And from what I've seen, it's really been PS5 users that have had this issue. Xbox users haven't really expressed this. PC users haven't really expressed this either.
Sounds
Um,
like a ray tracing issue.
yeah, and that's the thing. And someone did say like, hey, if you go in and you change the settings on the motion blur for the game, it does help it quite a bit. So I have done that, and it did dramatically help it. Where, because it's not just raining, sometimes it'll just randomly happen. Like even when I'm in a cutscene, it'll just start flashing that bright light. Um,
Mm.
it's
Okay.
gone down quite a bit since I've adjusted it on the motion blur, where I've enabled motion blur on it. I prefer games that don't have motion blur, and I don't know why, but because I just don't like that effect so much, that I'm willing to have the motion blur on. Um, that, those bugginess issues, that's really the biggest thing that's really holding me from a 9 to a 10. They've already put one patch out that's fixed a few different things as far as effects. They have not tackled this like flashing light glitch that's happening. And I also don't want to be I don't want to be 25 hours in the game and say, oh, it's a 10 out of 10, and by the time I finish it, I'm like, the story wasn't as captivating as it was in the beginning. I want to lower my score. If anything, I'd like to be able to raise my score. So with all that kind of being said, I love this game. I was planning on getting into Avowed as soon as it came out, but with me playing Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, I don't foresee putting this down until I see the credits roll, and from there I'll be moving on to my next game. So that's it's kind of my review in progress for Kingdom Come Deliverance 2.
Nice.
Uh, fair enough. Yeah. Um, Before we move on, all I'll say real quick is a lot of that stuff that you were describing is like all those positives for people that like those things is
Yeah.
all a lot of that stuff is the very reason why I cannot get into these games. It's too involved. There for me there's such a thing as too realistic and like that point is like where in most RPGs I'm used to, I fall off a high ledge, I take a little health damage, I drink a potion, I'm fine. In this kind of game, you fall off a ledge, you legit break your ankle and have to
Yeah.
hobble to the nearest town and fix it before
You
you
are a
can do anything
literal
else.
peasant.
And I
Like,
can't. Oh, I can't. I hate that
yeah,
shit so
like
much. I
there's like
can't. It's not for
so
me.
there's a mission in this game that literally you're supposed to spar with someone who's a sword master, and if you best him, he'll show you the master strike, which from what I'm gonna understand is like the key to like being good with a sword in this game because I am great with fist fighting, but when it comes to sword fighting, oh, I am so god awful. And I love get good games, but I struggle with the fighting and this. Like, if I'm fighting more than one person at one time, I'm cooked. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like, if I see two people walking to me at the same time, like, well, I'm gonna die here.
I tried
Um,
to play. I tried to play the first one, and the first combat encounter I had in that game is pretty much what immediately turned me off of it.
Yeah,
So like, yeah,
it's challenging.
yeah.
From what I'm to understand, it has dramatically improved in smoothness and response rate compared to the first game. So there is that's going for it, but I'm fighting this guy with a Master Strike, and like he pummeled me like 3 times in a row, and I have 1 health. I can only sleep so much. Like you can't if you sleep a certain amount, it won't let you go back to sleep. It says you're well rested. You don't need to sleep. So the only way to really heal is just from that decoction. So like I had to go and figure that out and make a bunch of them. I still haven't even gone back to him to try to figure out the to beat him to get the Master Strike, but now I at least have 20 potions, so that way I don't have to travel from the Nomad camp back to my base camp, rest, rest, heal, go all the way back to him, and try again and lose again. Now I'm actually fully prepared, but I like it. I really like that I have to like really like think about my approach on things before I actually delve straight into it.
Right. Yeah, well, and also my thing too is, and by the way, this is not a knock on the game at all. Like
Yeah. No,
from
I
what I
understand.
understand, it's objectively good, and I will not contest that. It's just not for me personally. But
Yeah.
I don't like stuff like Minecraft or the Forest where you have to like go out, chop down trees, build a fire,
Yeah.
build a house, build a shelter, do all this like real life stuff,
Yeah.
and then it's just repeat same day in and day out. Like it's good that Kingdom Come having a story makes it
Yeah.
sound more appealing, but all the gameplay mechanics are basically those crafting survival games with 1,000 extra steps, and
Yeah.
that's
Because
why I can't get into it.
it is like if you took Skyrim, took out the magic and dragons, and made it hyper realistic, that's what this
And
game is.
replaced it with having a job,
Yes,
basically. Yeah,
kinda, yeah, but I honestly love it. I love blacksmithing. It's so soothing to me. I love making alchemy. It's like
yeah.
it is like a historian's Stardew Valley is the best way I could try to
Okay.
describe this game. Like it is a cozy, it's weirdly cozy when I'm working on blacksmithing or alchemy or something like that, or I'm just riding my horse from one town to the next. Like I could fast travel, but sometimes I just want to ride my horse because it's genuinely like it is a cozy game for me in that regard. And man, I really like it. Like I enjoy the hyper realism. Like there are certain gamings or certain games that you really like, Justin, that I'm personally not into. That's the beauty of this industry is that
Oh
there's
yeah.
so many different types of games that appeal to different people, and it's cool to see how many people have resonated with this game. They sold 2 million copies in their first 10 days, and
God
for
damn.
yeah, for a developing team of like 40 people, and it was originally 12 people for the first game. Um, that's just insanity. Like that's just absolute insanity. But yeah, I if RPGs and hyperrealism or medieval worlds and all of that stuff is your jam, like, I could not recommend I could not recommend this game anymore.
I love all of that. except the hyper realism part.
Yeah, I know. I know.
I'll take photorealistic visuals in my horror games though. Like Resident Evil 7. Um, okay. Oh yeah. By the way, I'm pretty sure I hold the record for enjoying the most obscure games that a lot of people would never even look twice at. You know,
Yeah.
I enjoy a lot of the popular ones too, like Resident Evil and Assassin's Creed. But then here I am playing shit like In Sound Mind and No Straight Roads, and other people are like, "The fuck is that?"
Yeah.
You know, and I'm singing their praises. So yeah, I gotcha. Uh, Speaking of weird and the obscure, Nick, it's your turn.
So my media corner entry is a podcast. And I stumbled upon this podcast by complete accident. Um so I was listening to another podcast, and two of the hosts from this podcast called I Love My Kid, but they were guests on another podcast. So, and I recognize, I don't know, understand how I recognize, because it was someone completely different than who I was thinking of. But I decided to give this podcast a listen, and being a parent myself, I can tell you that when they open it up with a disclaimer that says, "Hey parents, uh the name of this podcast may have the word kid in it, but is not for kids. We swear a lot, and if you have your kids with you, maybe you should save this for later." Um, and they,
This podcast is for mommy's happy juice time.
dude, so okay, and these three parents are they do this podcast to make other parents feel not so bad for their parenting styles. This makes me feel better as a parent. It makes me feel like I'm doing something right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, dude, it's funny. They've had celebrity guests. They've had what Bobby Moynihan was on an episode, and the guy that plays Garrett in Superstore, Jason Mewes, Tiffany Thiessen, Kelly Kapowski from Saved by the Bell, uh,
Amen.
Danielle Fishel, uh, Topanga from the Boy Meets World series was a guest. There was one of the girls from Brooklyn Nine-Nine was a guest. It
Something.
was Stephanie Beatrice.
Stephanie Beatrice, that's Rosa. She also played the main girl in Encanto,
And she's Cuban.
Mirabelle.
Yeah, she's Cuban. She is the only Cuban guest so far, because I started from like the beginning. This episode, this podcast has been going on for a while, but
She's also in
they
Twisted
open
Metal, the TV show.
nice. They open it up, and they before they bring on their guest, they open it up to what they call circle time, and they tell parenting stories, and it's fucking funny. Um, and then they bring on the guest, and they pass what they call the struggle stick, and they claim that they found it in the garbage. It
Okay.
was they pass that off to their guest, and and then after the guest goes, they have pretty much open discussion on the topic of the episode, and then they close it out by anything that a parent is struggling with their parenting that they want to put in timeout, they put that shit in timeout. Like one of the things that I think it was either Kurt or Chris. One of them decided to put Pokemon in timeout because his daughter had gotten so overly obsessive with Pokemon, her school sent out a letter to all the parents. No more toys and Pokemon cards at school. His daughter was the reason Pokemon cards got banned.
I love the fact that this is still a problem now, and I remember
Yes.
Pokemon cards being banned from school when I was in school in the 90s.
Oh yeah.
Right? Dude, it's fucking dude, it's got to be the McDonald's Pokemon cards cuz they're doing that. They've been doing that shit a lot lately.
Some giants never die.
But dude, it's so fucking funny. And the closing statement is, and remember, no matter what you do, your kids will eventually resent you.
Oh no.
It's so, dude, I've related on this podcast, dude, in their quick, like maybe 30-40 minute episodes.
Okay.
So I can listen to multiple episodes in one day while I'm working.
I love how it's like low-key therapeutic too, because the way you described it, where
It is.
it's
I relate
part of
to
its part of its purpose is to, because I know for a fact that there's a lot of parents out there that have sometimes like felt like they're doing something wrong or like they're not doing enough,
Yeah.
or and they start questioning themselves. So it sounds like it's really helpful with that, which is a good thing. So on top of being like a comedy podcast, they're kind of like
They even say on the show,
doing doing good important work in a way.
Yeah, they do. They even say on the show, like, yeah, we do this show to make you not feel so bad as a parent.
Okay,
Or
yeah.
something along the lines of that.
Kind of like
But
how
it's-
the goal of this show is to bring back media literacy, which is a dying art form on the internet.
I am so glad I stumbled upon this show. Is fucking funny, dude. And a lot of the celebrity guests, I would have never guessed that they were parents. Like, I had no idea Bobby Moynihan was a dad. I didn't know, well,
Yeah, me neither.
I didn't know Jason Mewes was a dad.
Some of them it makes sense though, because a lot of them you name sounds like they were kids in shows that we grew up with, so they're at the age
Yeah.
to have kids of their own now.
Yeah. But it's really fucking good. But it's for anyone that has parents, the podcast is called I Love My Kid, but, and it is you can find it on anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever. You can find it in the Wondery section.
Okay. Huh. Seems like listening to Small Town Murder has accidentally introduced you to a bunch of other Wondery podcasts.
Yeah, it did. Because The Big Flop is a Wondery podcast too. And that's hosted by one of my favorite TikTok creators.
Oh,
Don't
nice.
Cross a Gay Man.
Okie dokie. All right. Well,
Yeah.
for the sake of keeping things in a different order than the life updates, I'm gonna go next. So, Methos, you opened us up in the life updates, and you'll be bringing up the rear for this section. I hope that's okay with you.
Sometimes I like being in the rear.
Fair
That's
enough.
what she said.
Wait. Nope.
At
Never
the
mind.
actual
Not
Women's Day.
exploring.
That's what he said.
That yeah. Not well. All right. Not exploring that one. Moving on. I've got a wee bit of a review, and I'm going to talk about a game that is currently free on the middle tier of PlayStation Plus. That's the extra game catalog. This game is Lost Records Bloomin' Rage Tape 1. This
I've
is
played some of this.
good. This is part 1 of a 2-part episodic game. Part 2 will be coming out in April. So, Lost Records is a narrative-focused adventure game in a similar vein to the original Life is Strange. Also, same developers, Don't Nod, kind of going back to their roots with this game. I hesitate to use the phrase return to form, but it definitely feels like that for them, you know. The gameplay basically consists of dialogue options and exploration with some very light puzzle solving. Like occasionally you might have to find a code for a padlock or, break it with a fire extinguisher, your choice. But there's also a video camera mechanic, which is one of the things I really like about the game. See, throughout the game, you have this handheld camcorder that you can pull out at pretty much any point and record stuff around you. And what's really cool about it is that there's a lot of nuances surrounding that. Like, different characters will have different reactions at different times to you filming things. And if you point the camera at them, they will take notice of the fact they're being filmed and react to it as well. And that can change depending on the situation. I actually had someone at one point, they were like, this is not the time to be filming me, put the camera away. And I was like, oh shit, sorry. It even opened up a new dialogue option where I got to apologize.
Whoops.
This is also how collectibles work in this game. So every once in a while when you have the camera out, certain objects in the environment will have like this pink box outline around them, and if you get the right camera angle on those objects, a little pink circle will show up indicating that you can record that object as a memoir. And once you have found every object in a particular memoir group, it creates a little video that you can go into your inventory and watch, that has like narration over it and stuff. So anyways, the year is 1995, and you play as Swan, who is a sort of socially awkward, possibly autistic, not confirmed, but heavily hinted at, dorky cat girl who's a little on the heavier side. And unfortunately, she's very used to being bullied and being an outcast as a result of this. So one day when she's being bullied by some older kids, these other kids around her age come and stand up for her, and then the four of them become good friends. And together they spend the rest of the summer hanging out, starting a band, and discovering a strange paranatural phenomena in the forest that will change their lives forever. Now fast forward 27 years, and they've all gone their separate ways and started new lives, but when one of them receives a mysterious package hinting that a stranger knows what happened between the four of them and the weird stuff in the forest, the old friends must now reconvene in the town where it all began as they reminisce about their lost childhood memories and try to piece together what really happened back in that summer of 95. So regardless of the paranatural stuff, though, sometimes the game can be a little atmospherically creepy. Like there's a point where you have an option to play Bloody Mary and whether or not you keep going, for example, and it gets a little spooky. But it's not a horror game, not by any means. A paranatural thriller at most, but also at the same time a coming-of-age teen drama as well.
Okay.
I would equate it to like a non-horror Stephen King novel, like Stand By Me. In fact, I would argue that this game in general is a gender-bent version of Stand By Me in a lot of ways.
Fair enough.
It also shares a lot of DNA with Yellow Jackets, the way it jumps back and forth between the past and the present, and how something weird happened with the girls in the woods in the past, and now the dark secret's coming back to haunt them in the present, and someone who knows their secret is messing with them. And I also think the game knows that it's a heavily Stephen King inspired because it references other Stephen King stuff, like It. Like at one point there was a jump scare with a cardboard cutout that looks like Pennywise, and there's a very important scene with a red balloon early on in the game. Oh
yeah.
So I wasn't sure whether or not I was actually going to review this until part 2 came out in April, but I had a chance to see both halves of this. I wasn't sure if I was going to review the game or not until part 2 came out in April, and I had a chance to see both halves of the story. But part 1, in my opinion, is so good on its own that I had to give it some praise. Here's the thing, though. It's not going to be for everyone. If you're the kind of person that needs constant flashing lights and explosions and gunfire to stay invested in a game, then it's not for you. Because this is a game that's about the story first and foremost. The gameplay is honestly an afterthought. It's a narrative game. It's a choose-your-own-adventure game, and those are more about the story than they are the gameplay every single time.
Oh, yeah.
Very Telltale inspired. It took me about 8 hours to finish part 1, and it took about 3 of those 8 hours for the weird shit to start happening. So you got to be patient, but I think the payoff is worth the setup. And your choices, they do have consequences in regards to like your relationship with the other characters, but not so much how the overall story pans out. So it is pretty on rails in that regard, but your choices more or less are about changing the journey leading to the destination, even though the destination will always be the same. You know,
Yeah.
it's yeah. If I had one piece of, if I can give anyone advice that plans on playing this, don't hit every dialogue option that pops up. Sometimes not saying anything at all is the best answer. Also, sometimes potential responses will pop up when other characters are still talking. And during these moments, my advice would be to be patient and not interrupt them. If you keep listening long enough, more dialogue options will pop up on top of the initial ones. So the more you listen to a character talk, you will have extra responses that you can give. So it's kind of realistic in that way. And those responses will start stacking on top of each other. But you can't wait too long because it's timed and eventually they'll all disappear. So if you want to say something,
Yeah.
you know. My other piece of advice, pull out your camera every opportunity you have and look around for things to record. A lot of the collectibles in the game are very easy to miss if you aren't constantly recording everything. And here's where it might get weird for some people. In the past, in 1995, when you're playing as Young Swan, the game is in third person until you pull out your camera. Then it looks like a found footage movie, complete with like classic vintage filter and everything. It's so cool. The graphics are actually better when you're looking through the camera than they are when you're not, in my opinion.
That's cool.
You know, even more.
It is, yeah. It's pretty cool.
More photorealistic, yeah. But in the year 2022, in the present, when it jumps back to the present, the whole game is in first person. And so you don't get to see what adult Swan looks like. But I think there's a reason for that I won't get into because of spoilers that I think they might tackle in part 2. But I do think it directly relates to her identity issues and stuff like that. You do get to see what the other girls look like as adults, though, because you're talking directly to them. But I will say this, I'm glad I finished part 1 before fully judging it, because I feel like the way it ends, and I'm not going to spoil it, but the way part 1 ends is essential to the entire experience. Like, they stick the landing, even though it's a to be continued landing, they stick it in a way that guarantees I will be back for part 2, because the way they ended this, I absolutely have to see what happens next. I can't leave it on that. I can't. So it's wild. So I feel like if you're gonna play this, be prepared to see it all the way through or don't play it at all, you know, because if you can't make it to the ending of part 1, then you're not getting the whole experience. And you won't be able to judge it fairly. You know, this is a game that requires you see the ending before you rate it, I think.
I have every intention on playing this thing the whole way through, part 1 and part 2.
I'm going to be on an island here. A lot of people are going to disagree with me, and that's fine, but I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. It's definitely not everyone's cup of tea. If you like Life is Strange style games and these like 90s Stephen King-esque weird paranatural stories that aren't quite horror but aren't quite not either, you know, then it'll be up your alley. But if you need a game that's more involved than walking around and interacting with things and choosing dialogue options, then you won't like it. You know, you'd be better off watching it on YouTube like a movie in that case. So
yeah, no, I can't wait to pick this game up again.
But yeah, I loved it. I actually want to do a second playthrough. Make different options, see what they do. So, yeah. So
It definitely sounds like the kind of game where I might not play it myself, but I love story stuff like that. But with the pacing and stuff like that, I'm probably more likely to watch one of my favorite Let's Players play it.
Well, you can look forward to a full, like, no commentary playthrough of the game on one of my channels, because I am going to upload gameplay of it, because this one is a contender for my top 10 this year, and I tend to record everything I play now just in case they make the list, so that I have that footage ready, and this one is a strong contender, so I want to get the footage for it anyways, but, like, be prepared for that to be like a 6-hour video that you'll probably have to watch in segments. So
nice.
I got to the part where they get to the package, but they haven't opened it yet.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Um. All right. And Methos, your media corner entry for us.
My media quarter entry is a bit different from the usual fare. This is a book series I literally just finished the last book of earlier today. Um, so the book series I'm going to refer to is called the Codex Alera.
Okay.
However, I got to the series because I'm a big fan of Jim Butcher, who's mostly famous for his series, The Dresden Files. And that's a pretty it's a very noteworthy series about a modern day wizard, kind of who opens up as a very in the public, private eye style wizard with his own office, solving modern supernatural problems. Very, very much in the same kind of a similar vein as like Sam and Dean, which is pretty cool.
Oh, okay.
Um, and falling in love with that series, I eventually, I put off his other works for a while because they weren't the Dresden Files, but eventually, Razzie got me into this one, and it's very cool because this one was started on a dare. So he was talking about how it's the skill of the writer and their ability to, build relationships with characters, do world building and stuff like that, that decides how good a book is going to be. Because one of the things he gets asked a lot is, where do you come up with these great ideas to write bestsellers in New York Times, uh, you know, uh, highest grossing books and stuff like that. And he's like, it's not about the ideas. It's not about, having the aha epiphany, like this is going to be the story that sells. He said, it's really what you put into it. And, he was challenged on that. So he said, you know what? I'll prove it to you. I will write a New York Times bestseller off of you give me two of what you feel like are the lamest subjects. You can make them as disparate as possible if you want to. I will tie them together in a single story and I will get it on the New York Times bestseller list. And then he didn't. He wrote a whole series of 6 books that all topped the charts.
Oh, wow.
And the dare he was given was the two topics were the Lost Ninth Legion of Rome and Pokemon. And they said if you can make that work, you're the king. So he did. He knocked that freaking out of the park. Obviously he can't call it Pokemon, so it's very inspired by, right?
Right.
But like, so you've got like a pseudo Roman Empire, and it's actually he's even got Pokemon built in a couple of different flavors. So like the way magic works, this is a high fantasy world. And the way magic works in this world is that around 10 years old, if that's, iconic for anyone who watches Pokemon, around 10 years old, people will come into a bond with a spirit out in the world called Furies. And much like Pokemon, these Furies come in different attributes of different elements. So they're all elemental spirits and Furies out in the world that eventually will bond to a mortal. And that gives them their uh, they call it crafting or channeling. By working through the spirit, they're able to conduct or to perform acts of elemental magic, and they can even draw that power into themselves. So like an earth crafter might be able to pull strength from the earth and have some kind of superhuman strength or resilience. A water crafter, um, using people's blood can influence people's blood and tissues and heal them and cure wounds and stuff like that. And it's very much in the realm of like mixing trainer and um, Pokemon in these idea of spirit furies.
Huh. And that also sounds a little bit like the element bending in Avatar.
Yeah, that's a lot. When I started reading, I thought a lot like I didn't actually get Pokemon right away. Like my first thought was Avatar because I've watched a little more of that. But yeah, it's kind of like they palmerized those ideas. Um, And then there's another race that these main sorcerers interact with, called the Marat, and they're like elves, but instead of like being wild forest elves, they're like tribal barbarian elves. but they also have their own kind of Pokemon thing going on, where they make a spirit bond with a creature out in the wilds. Um, and also, when they're in an adolescent age, much like a Pokemon trainer, they only usually bond to like one creature, but they bond with that creature, and whatever that creature type is, they're suddenly reborn into that clan. So there's like a horse clan. If you bond with a horse, there's these giant griffin type birds called herdsbane. So you could bond with one of those, and then literally follow them around with like Pokemon and act in tandem with their trainer and stuff like that. They run into battle like bonded with these beasts and like just acting off mental commands and stuff like that. It's really cool.
Ooh, like the familiars in Polar Express.
Yeah,
No, not
and
not 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 Polar Express. I'm sorry, Golden Compass.
yeah.
I
And
always do that.
so you've got your elves, which are like these tribal barbarians. You've got werewolves in this series. You've got icemen who are like um, uh, literal ice. Like the snowstorms follow them, and they have control over ice and snow. But they're like Yeti people. And then they've got like an infinite kind of insect army in this world as well that are almost kind of like Tyranids, or what are they called in StarCraft? Uh,
Ooh, I don't remember.
it escapes me at the moment. But yeah, so it's like you've got these different kind of high fantasy elements, and it's all really well drawn together, and it all takes place in, like I said, this kind of pseudo Roman society, and it's a really cool adventure. And one of my favorite things in any book, video game, movie series is the feeling of a progressing character. And like in the first book, it's the guy's fifth, the main character's 15, and each book is kind of like a progression in his character development and power level and stuff like that. You meet him when he's just a farm boy. You meet him when he's going to the academy and learning how to do cool stuff. And he's the only person in the world who has no access to a Pokemon. For some reason, none of these Spirit Furies will choose him. It's like Ash with no Pikachu, and he's the only one in the world. And so he's looked at as kind of a freak, or almost a handicap in this world because he has no access to it. And his being the only person without magic in a world full of magic is so isolating to this guy. But it's really cool to see him progress and move past the different trials of the book. So it's like the first one, he's a kid, but then the next book, it's he's training to be a spy called a cursor. So it's like the cursor story, and the next bite, or the academ story when he's in training. The next book is called the cursor story, when he's out of training, and then he becomes a soldier and a knight. And it's a really great story of progression, and the world building is just absolutely phenomenal.
That does sound awesome. Sounds like I would really be into it. The Codex Alera. Looks like there's a good amount of books in that series, too.
Yeah, there are 6 overall.
Okay. Okay. Do you know if they happen to be available on audiobook by chance? Or.
Yes, and that was my form of quote unquote reading it, is I listened to it on Audible.
Okay, they are on there. Okay, cool. I might have to give those a listen then, because that sounds really cool. Like I'm sitting here listening to you talk about it. I'm like, that sounds like a damn good story.
Highly, highly recommend. 10 out of 10, no notes.
Okay. A recommend and a review. I love it. All right. Well, with all that being said, then, gentlemen, all of these things that we talked about today, some of them are only available digitally, some of them physically and digitally. So I say that's a great transition into the topic.
Let's go.
All right.
Welcome to the world of tomorrow!
Why do you always have to say it that way?
All right, everybody, here we are at the topic of this episode, which is one that Nick and I have been tossing around and meaning to get to for a while. and we were just waiting for the right guest. It was either going to be Dylan or Methos, whichever one got to it first, and it ended up being Methos. So, um, and honestly, now we have our third cast member, Brooksy, too, so it's an even more involved discussion. So,
Hell
in a
yeah.
way, it just kind of
All
worked
right.
out. We get a lot. We can get a lot of different opinions here, because I have a feeling if it was just me and Nick doing this topic, it would be a lot of the same. It would be pretty one-sided, like not one-sided, but it would be a pretty agreeable discussion. Like it wouldn't, there wouldn't be any opposing views, really. I don't think. So, and that's not as exciting to listen to. So, I want to start this topic off by going around the room and asking everyone a very specific question. And that question is thus: do you prefer physical or digital media, and why? And if you want to, you can say that you sit somewhere in the middle. That's totally fine. Nick, you first.
So I prefer digital media. However, if it's something that I really truly enjoy and I want to have the bonus features, I'll shell out the money for a physical copy.
Right. Okay. Like a collector's edition or something?
Yes.
All right. So why do you prefer digital, though?
Why do I prefer digital? Convenience.
I figured that would be the answer.
Convenience.
I can't
there's
disagree.
there's no other way to put it. Convenience.
That is it's a completely fair answer. Methos, how about you?
I am one of those that sits somewhere in the middle. I feel like for quantity, digital, and then quality, things I really care about, I want physical.
Okay. Yeah. I can see that too. That's a good answer. Brooksy.
I am a firm and avid believer of 100% physical media personally. I am one that not only really loves to have the physical thing in my hand and say, this is mine, no one can take it from me, but I also just like the way that they sit on my shelves. I love collecting them. I used to be a collector of a number of things, and video games, movies, books, all are on the same thing. I am very much a physical person.
Fair enough. Okay, so I, much like Mythos, I sit somewhere in the middle too, and for me, it kind of, like Nick says, depends on what it is. If it's music, then it's obviously digital for me. Having something like Spotify and the availability to have a playlist of different songs from different artists that I can put on shuffle, is, and like hundreds of songs, more than you could ever hope to fit on any CD. Ian, it's convenience to me in that aspect rather than taking, like, listening to one CD by one artist over and over again or whatever and having to switch out discs. And I prefer the accessibility of music being available digitally. However, I am also an avid owner of several collector's editions of different games that came with, like, collector's edition statues like Kratos and Nathan Drake, and stuff like that. So I definitely prefer, or at least throughout most of my life have preferred physical media, but I feel like as I'm getting older, that's becoming less of a thing for me. As I look at my media shelf and start to realize I don't have a lot of room on there anymore, and they're not really selling DVD shelves anymore. Like, this is getting out of hand. Like, I bought Astrobot digitally, not only because I just wanted to get to it right away, but also, and I didn't know it was being released physically, to be honest, but also just because I'm running out of room on my shelf. That's a big part of the problem for me. I have too many games. Like, I have a lot, and I've sold some, traded them into GameStop. I still don't have a lot of room on there. And Yeah, so for me, it depends on the thing. Like having my favorite TV shows available on streaming apps so I can just push a button and binge them. That's cool and all. But certain movies I have to have the physical editions of, like Lord of the Rings and Star Wars, because they're collector's items for me. Big nerd and all that. So it really depends. I would say not only does it depend on the type of media, but even further than that, it depends on the franchise for me, whether or not I'm willing to buy it digitally or if I have to have a physical copy. Like if it's Assassin's Creed, I have to buy it physically. I just have to have them all on the shelf. Kingdom Hearts, same story, but if it's like, say, I don't know, GTA 5 or Saints Row or Red Dead Redemption, I can the digital's fine for those for me. So I fluctuate, and the older I get, the more tired and the more achy my bones get, the more I lean towards digital. If I'm being completely honest,
Fair enough.
but it depends. It just depends on the thing. If it's a big collector's item or whatever, like when they re-released, or like I have no problem watching certain movies digitally. I do all the time. But if it's a movie I really, really like, even if it's available on a streaming app, I have to have a physical copy of it. Like Talk to Me,
Mm-hmm.
I had to get a physical copy of that.
Yep.
You know, so Deadpool and Wolverine, it's on Disney Plus. Have to have a physical
Yep.
copy.
Same.
You know,
I
Nick understands.
sure do.
Yeah.
I have the other. I
So
have the
there
other
are
two on. I have the other two on. I have the first and second on Blu-ray, and I ended up buying the Deadpool and Wolverine on Blu-ray as well. 4K
right.
Blu-ray.
It One thing that always kept me from being a exclusively physical only person, by the way, is because I discovered that a lot of the best indie games are never going to get physical copies because it's out of their budget, and I have to accept the fact that they will always be digital only, and I cannot let that stop me from giving them a chance. you know um and I advocate for open-mindedness, in a lot of ways, and especially ways like that. I have to ask Brooksy. I'm assuming that you make an exception for stuff like
Yeah,
that, like Journey
I do.
and yeah,
I will say, if there is an opportunity for me to buy something physically, I'm going to get it physically. However,
yeah,
if it is something that I cannot get physically, then I will get it digitally. A good example of like last year is, Black Myth Wukong. It came out, it was originally just digitally. They did not make any announcements of a physical release coming out. They ended up coming out with a physical release, and now I have double dipped in a cookie jar and I own both a physical and a digital copy of it. Um, Same thing with like Baldur's Gate 3. That was also originally just digitally, unless if you got the collector's edition. I was a little too late to the game on being able to procure a physical copy, and I am just I love Baldur's Gate 3. I'm not willing to spend $200 on a physical copy. So in those
yeah,
regards, like yes, I do use digital, but I am still very much the kind of person that has, not even kidding, a CD disc sleeve that is on my mirror inside of my car for me to be able to listen to CDs while I'm inside of my car. I am someone that owns hundreds of DVDs and Blu-rays, and the way that we kind of get around it is we have a really cool sectional that each seat has, you can actually lift the seat up and there's like a secret hidey hole compartment under it that each one holds 100 DVDs inside of it, and there's six of them. So it more than holds our entire collection. I think a big reason why there's a lot of layers as to why I'm big on physical media. For one, I like the best quality possible. So when you're streaming a game or you're streaming a movie, and movie, I'm going to use it as a bigger example. Um, Movies get compressed down quite a bit to be able to be streamed. And on
yeah,
top of that, with your internet, really decides on how close to 4K it actually gets, but it never actually reaches a true 4K. Even with me, who I've got 850 megabytes per second on my internet because I have it directly jacked to my TV, I still don't get true 4K, as opposed to when I pop in a Blu-ray into my Blu-ray player, because I am that person that actually owns like a physical Blu-ray player. You can tell the huge differences between the two. Also, like, as far as like video games, there are a lot of games that if you don't have internet, you're not really able to play certain games. And I'm not talking about just specifically like online games like Fortnite or something like that, but there are several games that it will just not let you access it unless if you're connected to the internet, which is why there was such a huge meltdown from people from when PlayStation Network was down for a couple of days because they just
Yeah.
didn't have access to so many games. Meanwhile, I'm able to pop in my Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and I'm like, I don't understand what the problem is because I own it. Um, the
Single
the
player
yeah,
RPGs. Yeah.
the last really big thing for me is that when you digitally purchase a game or a movie, you don't actually own that game or own that movie. What you basically pay for is you pay for a license to be able to view it, but that doesn't mean you're always going to be able to view it. You look at movies that have like weird issues, like a good example is like Dogma. That is a movie that has not been in production for 20 years because of the whole Harvey Weinstein thing. Um, it's not available on streaming, it's not available on anything, and it was at one point but no longer is. I own a physical copy of it. I can watch it whenever I freaking please. And for that, and when you look at like digital games, because we haven't really entered an era until recently where quite a few games are digital, we don't know what it's going to look like 20 years down the road when they shut down servers on a PS4. What happens to those digital games that you owned on your PS4 or PS5 or something like that? Do they just up and disappear? I'd rather personally just have the 100% guarantee no matter what. I have this game and I will always own this game, and there is nothing anyone can do to take this game from me. So that's some of the reasons why I'm so big on physical media.
Yes.
I gotta agree with that. I still have a PS4 I will never get rid of because it still has a copy of
PT or
Silent
something.
Hill PT on it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
exactly the point. Like I am so afraid that if the servers ever go down, like you can't re-download something, much like with PT or something like as much of a blunder as it was, and it's not necessarily applicable to this, but like Concord, like
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
can still physically own a Concord game, but you can't have
Play
it
it.
download it.
You
Yeah,
can't do anything. Yeah.
yeah.
Um.
But
I have to imagine any
There was
game
a
that's already on your hard drive would be fine, but re-downloading anything that's not already installed, yeah, it would be
exactly. So unless if
SOL.
you're
Yeah.
proactive and like get a few external hard drives maybe, but I'm still not sold that that something may come up where they just block anybody being able to use things that aren't a physical CD.
Yeah.
And that concerns me.
that has come up amongst game developers recently too, where they're talking about plans in the future to be able to revoke licenses to games that you bought X amount of years ago. And I can't remember
Exactly.
which game developer said it, but they said that gamers have been spoiled for too long and they need to get used to the idea that just because you pay for a game one time doesn't mean that you necessarily own it forever. And so
Yeah.
they kind of want to make your $60 or whatever where you pay for the game last you only a X amount of time, which is crazy to me.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
it's
that's why
fucking
like
dumb.
Yeah, and the
I've
reason they would be able to do that, and actually it's kind of a contestment to one of your, your benefits of physical, Brooksy, is that
mm,
Physical copies of games now are legitimately no different than buying them digitally. They take up the exact same amount of hard drive space. That didn't used to be the case in the PS3 era. The reason it
Right.
is now is because that disk you put in your system is basically a glorified zip file that's unpacking a compressed game onto the hard drive and installing it. And the disc, from that point forward, is nothing more than a license check to make sure you own the rights to play that game. But the actual game itself is running off your hard drive, not the disc.
Yeah. No, and I'm aware of that, but that's the thing is if I, you know, with that compressed game that's on that disc, I can still, with no internet,
Mm-hmm.
anything on my PlayStation, I can pop that in, download a game without any internet or anything, and be able to boot it up and play it.
Also, you can
Um,
sell it, trade it, lend it to a friend.
yes,
Like, yeah, those,
exactly.
yeah, it's a double edged sword. Digital and physical are both double edged swords. There's pros and cons
Yeah,
to both,
and I
and that's why I thought this would make such a great discussion. Honestly.
no, and that's the thing, and like I also look at it on like on an economic standpoint. Like you got to think there are millions upon millions of games that are created on discs every single year. Same thing with movies, and you are seeing things like rolling back on places like Target where they're no longer going to be selling Blu-rays anymore, and with that comes with people being laid off in manufacturing roles. And so there is also a huge economic impact on whether or not physical media exists as well. So that's why there are so many reasons for me to want to be so pro physical media. And like, yes, it does take up space. I'm not gonna deny that. Like I have so
let's
I have
let's
so many things.
let's be realistic though too. All these like instant load times and stuff that we want from games now that we've gotten accustomed to. You try to go back to like a PS3 or 360 game on the PS3 or 360, and it's gonna feel like they're
Yep.
running slow as shit now. You know, whereas if you play a 360 game on the Xbox Series S or X, it's like instantaneous.
Yep.
And the reason for that is because these games are all running on SSD hard drives, and if they were running off the disk rather than the hard drive, you wouldn't get as fast of load times and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the disc is still just a Blu-ray. you know.
No, I again
Mm-hmm.
fully not disagreeing, and that's the thing is like for us to have the quality of what we have, like there needs to be a digital aspect to it. But again, like I want to be able to know that what I purchased, I get to keep forever,
Mm-hmm.
and that is such a huge thing to me, and that's why that's why I buy so many movies on Blu-ray. And if it's a movie that we talked about, like if it's something I don't overly care about, like I'm not going to get a physical. I do still get a physical. I just get a used DVD version of it instead because it's a
Yeah.
lot cheap. It's like $3 at the used store down the road from me. But I still physically own it, and I still get to be able to enjoy it whenever I want to. And if there's internet outage or anything like that, I'm still able to enjoy every bit of media that I want. Even with like some like streaming services. Sam and I we only have Netflix and Hulu, and at the beginning of well, Netflix, Hulu, and Disney Plus because it was like $2 more for on Hulu. But as of or last year, same time last year, we had every single streaming service possible, and we just realized we were spending like $130 a month for streaming, and I'm like, I would rather just cancel everything outside of what is like absolute do or die necessary for us, which like Netflix is one of them because a lot of things on Netflix are Netflix exclusives. So
Yeah.
the only way to be able to watch it is through digital. If I had a physical option, I would do the physical option instead. And then Hulu, just because it has enough of things that I didn't want to get rid of it. And now I'll allocate, $30 a month or something like that to be able to build our collection of movies and DVDs that we have, and we save money and we're able to watch things that either aren't on streaming or they're on streaming for a few months and then they get dropped, and now you're like, crap, like now I can't even watch this thing, or I have to go to another subscription to be able to watch it. And I don't have to deal with that headache ever. I just I just open up my couch and grab my movie that I want to watch.
I can't say that I'm advocating for this for legal reasons, but if you want physical copies of, well, quote unquote, physical copies of streaming exclusive shows that don't get sold on DVD, there are special websites where you can do that, and you can
Oh,
back them up to a hard drive or a server.
I'm I'm
You
I'm
can.
I'm quite aware of said special websites. And my wife and
Yarg
I
me
do
hearty and all that.
yeah, my wife and I do have a couple terabytes that have quite a bit of things on it, which is why I say I'm not 100% physical, or I'm not doing it, but I will
Yeah.
say I am 90% physical, and then the 10% is either out of necessity, or I haven't yo-ho mateyed in a few months and I just want to plug in and play. Uh,
Right. Right. Nope.
Sometimes you just
so
gotta take the Black Pearl out for a spin.
I get you.
yeah,
There are a couple things that you said that I do want to circle back to, but before that,
yeah.
Nick, I believe you had something on this whole topic that you wanted to say.
Yeah, so one of the movies that I really enjoyed that I wanted to have a physical copy of, I fell short. I had it pre-ordered. I had the 4K Ultra HD Steelbook edition of Wicked pre-ordered, right? But when it came time for it to ship, I did not have the funds in my account, and it
No.
auto canceled. I'm like, God damn it!
Oh.
That was just my fucking luck. But I did
Yeah.
end up finding a digital copy that comes with the bonus features on Fandango at home for $20.
So
That's a great point in the
yeah,
for digital. There is that most 99% of the times a digital copy is not going to be sold out.
Exactly.
that
That is true.
and more digital copies of movies are starting to include the bonus features that you would get on the Blu-rays, the bloopers, the behind the scenes, all that. I still love having that stuff though. Like
I'm just
I've been
I'm
oh, go
just
ahead.
mad that I yet again missed out on another steelbook.
Now,
Yeah,
Nick, counter offer and counter argument on the
yeah.
physical side. If you ever decide to move to San Diego, I will let you borrow my steelbook copy of Wicked that I do have in this house right now,
Oh,
because with physical, I can share with
yeah. You
whoever I
sure
want
can.
because it's
You sure
mine.
can.
Yeah, but you're just basically just teasing him at that point because he doesn't have his own, and you're like here, you can hold mine temporarily.
Hey, you got a
You can
deal
see
on
what it's
a.
like
That
to
was
hold
dirty,
greatness
Brooksy.
for a minute.
Hey, Nick, you got to deal with shipping with your job. I'll just ship it to you. You ship it back to me.
I will say this though, one good thing about physical still being a thing is GameFly for video games because yeah, so PlayStation Plus and Game Pass are nice, but you know what they don't have? Nintendo Switch games. So there
Yeah.
is something, having GameFly helps with that. It helps me save money because like even if I add up the total of PlayStation Plus, Game Pass, and GameFly and doing all three of those every month, it's still cheaper than if I bought all of these new games at full price the day they came out. You know, ultimately. So there is something to be said about that. I do so physical is good that things like GameFly can still exist, but then digital is good that you have things like Game Pass and PlayStation Plus. In fact, I literally bought the digital Xbox, the Series S, specifically to be a Game Pass machine. um,
Fair enough.
because I just figured the convenience of that, you know, so many of their exclusives come to Game Pass day one at no additional cost. And
Mm-hmm.
PlayStation Plus is catching up, but Game Pass is still the better deal overall, I think.
Oh yeah.
They just haven't had as many heavy hitters lately. um, but PS Plus Extra is catching up. Um, you know, one of the things I thought about with this topic was the fact that releasing digital only almost killed the Remedyverse when Alan Wake 2 released digital only, even though that game was nothing but accolades. It was up for Game of the Year. It won Best Narrative at the Game Awards. So many people online said that they refused to buy it until they do a physical copy, and the only reason they hadn't is because the game wouldn't have existed in the first place if Epic didn't back it with publishing money. Remedy, they don't self-publish. Pretty much all of their games are published by different people. Quantum Break was published by Microsoft. Max Payne was published by Rockstar. I forgot who published Control. But, yeah. And then Alan Wake 2 was published by Epic Games. So they barely had the funding to get it going anyways, and I think that's honestly why their games are half live action footage, is to save money on the budget. Honestly. But it works because it gives it a very Twin Peaks vibe that I love. But so many people, and it irritated me seeing this, they were like, I'm not buying it until it's physical. I'm like, oh my god, you're missing out on greatness. Well, here's the thing. They announced, what was it, earlier last year at Summer Game Fest or something, that they were finally releasing a physical copy of Alan Wake 2 because they got enough funding from the digital version of the game in order to be able to justify it. So the popular...
That makes sense, yeah.
So, in a way, if it wasn't for all those people like me buying the game digitally, there wouldn't be a physical version.
Yeah.
So sometimes stuff like that happens too. You can't knock the developer for not having the funding to print discs because that's expensive. It's not their fault. It's not their fault.
Yeah.
And
again, that's
if your game is being funded by another publisher, you also, that kind of makes them your boss, and you kind of have to, that's why I hate EA so much, because they stick their fat fingers in BioWare's gumbo too much. And getting the bad company. But what were you gonna say, Brooksy?
honestly completely lost my train of thought on that one.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. It's
I
totally
painted
fine.
the image of fat fingers and gumbo there, and everyone was like, "Yep." But yeah, it's not the developer's fault if they can't make physical copies. Sometimes they choose not to. Sometimes it's a weird choice. But Baldur's Gate 3, as much as it seems like a AAA game, it's technically an indie developer. They didn't have the budget for discs.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for that game to go on sale cheaper than $10 off.
Yeah, it is worth it. I will admit, if you have a cool 100 hours to blow, oh man, such a good game. Such a good game. My Sharon, my new roommate, I think she's already put in 1,000 hours into the game. Has it modded to the teeth on her PC. But it's so good. I do remember what I was gonna say earlier is I was just gonna say regarding something like Alan Wake 2, if the developers have said hey, we are most likely not going to have a physical, or if we do, it's not going to be for quite some time or anything like that. That, for me personally, that's not going to stop me from buying the game digitally. I guess my biggest thing is, if there is a physical, I will buy physical, but if it is only digital, I'm not going to have that stop me. I mean, my favorite indie game of last year, there's no physical copy of it. It was Another Crab's Treasure.
Oh yeah.
And, so good. It was one of the most fun Souls-like games I've ever played. And it was so rich and vibrant and just such a funny story. But that game, still to this day, still does not have any kind of a physical version. I do periodically check in.
And it probably never will. It's such an
Yeah.
indie game.
Yeah, but
It's
you would be surprised because if you look at companies like I am 8-bit, or if you look at like limited run games, like they will take those smaller, smaller indie games that just have like a really strong true core fan base, and they'll do a batch of like 5,000 copies of it physically on a disc. And I do have a few different games that I've gotten from them that I really, really wanted. A lot of them usually are kind of like remakes of old games that they just put on a newer console, like a PS4, PS5, or something like that. But it's not there's a 0% chance. Um, but if I feel like it's very unlikely, yeah, I will still get the digital version of something.
I was gonna ask about limited run games because they do physical copies of popular indie games like Undertale, but they also jack up the prices of them in the process. And
Yeah.
it's obviously you're paying more because it's a physical copy, but that's something worth mentioning too. Physical copies of games often run more expensive than their digital counterparts. Not always, though. If it's a AAA game, it's gonna be $70 either way. But you could argue, depending on where you live, too, digital games sometimes don't have tax on them, or less than a physical copy does. Depending on where you get it from. Um, so that's kind of one of the pros and cons too. Uh, Methos, you were showing me a list you had earlier about the pros and cons of physical and digital. Would you like to share some thoughts?
Sure. To piggyback off what Brooksy was saying earlier about when you own something physical, you always own it, right? As long as it's physically in your possession. I wanted to mention a time I got burned by a popular app called Google Music,
Oh,
Mm.
and it's been replaced, of course, with YouTube Music because they merged. But when it was Google Music, they had kind of like iTunes for like $1.25. You could download a song, and I think over a course of like 5, 6 years, I probably downloaded a couple hundred songs. So if you think about that, over $1 a piece. When they merged with YouTube for YouTube Music was only a music streaming service, and so basically all of the songs you paid to download and quote digitally, quote unquote keep no longer existed. And it
Hmm.
was one of those things that was just like, oh, okay, so I thought I owned these, but then they were just able to just turn them off one day. Just it feels bad. It just feels like a couple hundred bucks down the drain. And
yeah,
I think after
yeah.
a burn like that, I always worry about that kind of thing when I, and not that it stops me, right? Like I still buy digital games on Steam and PlayStation Store and stuff like that, and movies, I'll buy online and stuff like that. And obviously, I'm a huge Audible fan, so books and stuff. But I always like, especially if it's something a little more expensive, like if I'm getting a season of something like Game of Thrones or whatever off the PlayStation Store, then I'm always a little hesitant, like, okay, but yeah, is this just going to disappear one day after I spend this money? So that's
Right.
something I am always wary of.
Right. Yeah, and there's always that gamble too of not getting a refund on something. Like so many people put so much money into cosmetics and stuff in these online games like Fortnite and stuff. And
Oh,
I'm
for
I'm
sure.
pretty sure Fortnite will live forever, but so many of these games the servers get shut down and all of that investment that you put into it is gone. You don't get that back. It's just gone.
Yeah.
Whereas I have a physical copy of Assassin's Creed 2 sitting on my shelf that I can still pop in my PS3 and play like the day I got it. Like there is something to definitely be
Yeah.
said
I
about
mean,
both
even
sides.
you got to think like they still to this day, they have not released any port, remake, remaster, anything of the original Assassin's Creed 1 game, and the only way you can play it is if you have the PS3 Assassin's Creed 1.
Same
Um,
for Batman Arkham Origins,
exactly.
which I do have a
That's a good
copy
point.
of. I have a PS3 copy of Arkham Origins, I am glad to say. um
Now, in counter to the point where you're like, hey, if I've still got the physical copy, I can still pop it in whenever I'm ready. With digital, though, they are less likely to ever come across a time where the format's not usable anymore. For instance, VHS, yeah, you can still find a tape player out there, but it's few and far between. And anybody
Yeah.
still remember HD DVDs from when Xbox first released?
Yep.
Yep.
And Blu-ray
Yup.
did a violent corporate takeover, and after a bloody war, no one remembered HD DVD anymore.
I
Yeah,
was wondering
it-
why they those didn't stick around.
Yeah, well,
Well,
joke's on you. I still have a VHS player and a CRT, so it looks the right way on my TV.
because
Thank you.
because Blu-ray killed HD DVD. 360 and PS3 were competitors, and one of the big advantages PS3 had was that it used Blu-ray. And it also doubled as one of, to this day, it's still one of the objectively best Blu-ray movie players that you can get out there, because it has settings on it that you can tweak, like HDMI super white and stuff like that give you the best overall like picture quality. So, and the upscaling is damn near unmatched, quite frankly. Whereas like if I go out on my 4K TV in the living room and I pull up like, I will say Disney Plus does have, I know that streaming is compressed, but I do think Disney does a pretty good job with it. They all that money that they have. Because if I pull up one of the Star Wars movies, like even one of the old ones on my 4K TV, they did a damn good job with the upscaling. Whereas if I put like the 1080p Blu-ray disc in the PS5 and pull it up and play it, it's gonna look worse than that streaming version I just had up, because it's upscaling a lesser resolution. At least to my eyes, it does look a little bit worse. Not in a way that's super noticeable though, because it's still just being upscaled, regardless either way. But I will say though, art preservation, I'm glad that you guys brought up games that you can't find anymore, because there is, for some of them, a way to still get them, and that is digital only through things like PlayStation Plus Premium and Nintendo's Virtual Console, where they have digital ports of these old classic Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64, PS1, PSP games and stuff like that. And a lot of them you cannot find a physical copy anymore, and if you do, it's like $300 on eBay. So, in a way, there is some of these old games are being kept alive digitally, for things that you otherwise would never be able to find again, honestly. So I do think that that's good, that they're keeping those alive through that. And it makes them more accessible too, because the Virtual Console on PlayStation and Nintendo, all those games have save anywhere and rewind features, and like trophy support in PlayStation's case and stuff like that, giving you an excuse to go back to them. So I do think that those are good for art preservation, but then there are cases where that art preservation doesn't work very well, like the infamous remasters of what was it, San Andreas and Vice City, that were
the
very
GTA
broken.
collection.
Yeah. And then the Metal Gear Solid remastered collection they put out in 2 parts that's overpriced and broken. Yeah, so it doesn't always work, but I would argue that the virtual consoles on on PlayStation and Nintendo Switch are actually really good. However, they should let us, well, PlayStation does. On PlayStation, you can buy these games separately and download them. You don't have to have PS Plus Premium to play them, but you can for free if you do. However, Nintendo won't let you just buy these games and download them. You have to play them on the Virtual Console, which, that's a little, that's very Nintendo of them. But, they also, their games never go on sale, digital or physical. It's kind of a point of contention for me. I have so many Nintendo games on my wish list just waiting for the price to drop. It's been like 7 years and it's still the same price. So, it's a little unfortunate. Nick, I know we're getting close to you having a hard out. Any other thoughts on this particular topic before you go?
So for music, I do still have a bunch of my old CDs. I'm sure you remember my obsession with James Durbin.
Yes.
All of the all of the physical copies of his albums that I have are signed.
Oh yeah, that's a keeper then.
Yeah, no, that's I can't get rid of those.
No, yeah,
Um,
no.
as far as buying new, there's only a handful of physical copies that I would actually consider buying, but I would want them in vinyl copies. Like, I think Jelly Roll's new album would be one of them. They actually have a Walmart exclusive uh design, like a smoke design record vinyl. Um it's got a cool design on it, but I would need to get a record player in order to play them.
Yes, yeah, but from what I hear, vinyls are objectively the best audio you can get for any type of music. That's one way that I know that physical media isn't quite dead yet, is because
They're still making they're making vinyls again.
yeah, their old formats come back. You know,
Yeah, they sure do.
history kinds of repeats itself, but then at the same time, you have places like Best Buy completely gutting their physical media sections. You know,
Yep.
and GameStops around the nation closing down left and right. Um,
Yep.
so it would be naive to say that we're not eventually headed towards an all digital future.
Speaking of GameStop,
But yeah,
if I remember correctly, I saw something during the PlayStation Network outage on their social media, and said something. They took a shot at the gamer community and said, "Bet you guys are missing your physical copies now, huh?"
yeah,
The official GameStop Twitter page
that
was
is
talking some shit.
that is that is pretty funny. Um, so yeah, there is stuff like that happening, but I will also say this though: space for physical copies of things and digital copies of things, space is a problem. It's limited.
Yes, it is.
You know,
Absolutely.
You run out of space on your shelf. You run out of physical space in the closet for your pop figures and other collector's items and shit. You know, yeah, and you run out of space on the hard drive for all the games that you've downloaded. And let's be honest, games like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth are like 100 gigs on their own. And you know, you got to have at least a terabyte to have a snowball's chance in hell of having more than 5 games installed at once. And it's gotten pretty ridiculous, these sizes. And, you know, that's why more and more people are going to cloud gaming and stuff. But I gotta be honest with you, streaming is fine for movies and TV shows. We're not quite there yet for video games. There's still too many problems. There's latency issues, there's visual quality issues. Cloud gaming might be the future, but we're not there yet. I don't think
No.
ISPs aren't ready for it either. Like our internet service providers, they are not prepared. They do not have the infrastructure for cloud gaming. We're just not there yet. You know, I've tried it on things like Xbox Game Pass and stuff, and depending on the game you're playing, it works well enough. If you want to play Forza, you could do that, but if you try to play something like Devil May Cry, you might have some problems. You know,
Fair enough.
yeah, anything that's fast paced and reactionary, because there's already latency between the controller and the TV, anyways. Especially TVs that have a bunch of post processing effects turned on, that'll really mess with it. So
Yeah.
when you add the internet streaming into that adds even more latency between when you push the button on the controller and when the thing actually happens on the screen. And for like a turn-based RPG or whatever, that doesn't matter, and you won't even notice it. But for like a Dark Souls or something, that can be the difference between life or death. So
Yeah.
we're just not there yet for the cloud gaming. I don't think. Thoughts, anyone?
Interestingly, while this is a topic that a lot of people will think of in gaming terms as video games, it's actually something that spills over to the tabletop gaming industry as well.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
Miniatures and stuff like that. Previously you can only buy miniatures from miniature creators, but with the popularity of 3D printing these days, like some companies are like full on moving to only selling STLs, and then even big names like the biggest name in the miniature hobby is Games Workshop, right? And a lot of people are uh, there's a whole lot of smaller companies popping up where they'll sell like legally distinctly different versions of very similar miniatures that the expensive Games Workshop would sell. Um, but they're just selling you the STL file so that way you can print it yourself and have a whole army ready to go for a fraction of the cost. And a lot of companies are also switching over to like digital only rules, whether it's free PDF download, or some games are even making their own apps where their rules are completely self-contained in an app. And yeah, it's really kind of modernizing the space of tabletop games.
Wow. I didn't even know it was possible for something that is literally called tabletop gaming to be that involved in the future. Like, I know there are some VR games where you put on a VR headset and then you go into like a world where you play tabletop games with your hand controllers and stuff. It's all immersive. And I know that there's like tabletop simulator I've heard of, where people can play tabletop games online together, or a lot of people use it for D&D actually if they can't be in the same room. So that's kind of cool and useful. And I know Warhammer has like full on like action video games based on it, but I never thought that something like that could fully translate to the digital realm in the way that's interesting. We'll find a way to
Agreed.
digitize anything if we can, I guess. What were you going to say?
I just said I agree.
Honestly, I'm looking at the picture you sent me, your notes here, and quite frankly, I think we covered everything that you wrote down without even like at one point or another through somebody's dialogue. Pretty much everything you had in your notes here is something that we talked about.
Exactly. That's why I didn't. I was skipping around because I was like, okay, we touched on that. We touched on that. Yeah, then we're good to go.
It was a really good discussion, gentlemen. You know what? I'm gonna go ahead and say that's a wrap. Does anybody have any final thoughts on this topic? Anything they didn't get to say that they want to get out? Now's the chance.
Not that I can think of.
Yeah, I think I said everything I wanted about physical media with my full chest today.
You did. It was a great,
Yeah,
great
you did.
discussion. Any closing thoughts from you, Methos?
I just wanted to, as a closing thought, thank you for having me on. In addition to being a longtime viewer, longtime fan as well. And yeah, as much as we chat in your comment section on Messenger, I think this is only like our, I don't know, fourth, fifth time actually chatting and hanging out. So this was enjoyable.
Hell
Yeah, we
yeah.
gotta do it more often. We'd be glad to have you on the show again. This was a lot of fun. And man, you and I, we gotta do a let's play of something sometime or something.
Heck yeah.
All right. Well, for those of you who are watching this on YouTube, let me know your thoughts. Do you prefer physical or digital media, and why, in the comments down below? And if you enjoyed the video, remember to smash that like button. You can also email me at podcastoversoul@gmail.com, and I will read your email on the show if you send it, so just know that. And also, you can find me on Twitter at Oversoul53. My co-hosts have been Nick, who you can find at TheGamingFiend1 on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and Blue Sky.
Yes.
And Brooksy, as Brooksy my boy, that's boy with an I, like boy on Instagram. And our guest has been Methos, formerly of the YouTube channel Frost and Fists, currently under construction, but subscribe anyways and keep an eye out for the changes coming soon. And with all that being said, thank you all so much for listening, and we will catch you in the next one. Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Later.
Laters.